Hi everyone and welcome back. It's Mindy with Mindy Egan Design, and today I'm going to be showing you a card that I created using some products from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm doing some watercoloring with the Zig Clean color markers. So here's the stamp set I'm going to be using. This is the Center Cut Flowers from Simon Says Stamp. It's a red rubber stamp and that middle comes out, and I'm just going to be using the middle piece of this. So this is some Tim Holtz watercolor paper. There's a textured and a smooth side, and I'm going to be using the smooth side for this. So I'm placing this in my Misty tool. I removed, or I'm going to be removing the mat that is in my Misty tool because this is a rubber stamp. There's an additional thickness there, so you don't need that extra mat in your Misty. And I already prepped my paper with a anti-static powder tool bag because I'm going to be heat embossing this. So I'll just hold that down with my magnet and I'll stamp this in the Simon Says Stamp clear ink, which is great for embossing. It's a nice sticky ink. So I'll just ink that up real good, push down really good to make sure I have all the coverage there of that. And then I can heat emboss this with some white embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. And I keep mine in a little container. I actually want to get a bigger container for my embossing powder because this kind of gets a little hard to keep it contained. I don't like having loose paper floating around. I like it all contained there in the container. So I think I'm going to invest in a bigger one, which you can just use like a Gladlock container for those. That would work just fine. So I'm making sure to get a really nice coverage all over the place, kind of brushing off any extra pieces that are hanging around, and I usually like to do that with a little paintbrush. And then I've had my heat tool warming up off on the side, so that way I can just come directly to the paper and heat emboss this. And it'll go through really quick. I know that's really hard to see on the screen, and I'm sorry, but it is going to leave that white outline there on my cardstock. And I also flip the piece of paper over to and kind of heat that up just to kind of help prevent any warping. So now I'm going to start coloring my image. Now I'm not completely familiar with zigs. I've used them here and there, so I'm still learning. And this first portion of the video I left in real time just to show you how slow I go and just kind of what I'm doing. And I know it's hard to see the lines, but once this image starts really coming together with the colors, you'll be able to see that a lot better. It's nice to kind of wait till you have the whole thing completed. So I came in, I had showed you in the beginning, I'm starting off with, I think it was light carmine. Yes, it was light carmine. I'm just keeping this really simple. I'm not going to add an additional color. I just really wanted to try this out, and I was really inspired by the card that Debby Hughes made. I believe she used watercolors though. Zigs were kind of my introduction. I've played with watercolors, but not very much. I'm not completely comfortable with them like I am with my Copic markers. So I just took my light carmine and add a little bit down in the bottom part of that first petal. And I'm just breaking this down into sections. So I put some color down with my marker, and you can see that I'm doing this with my paintbrush is I have a little dish of water off on the side, and then I have a paper towel there. So I'll dip my little paintbrush in there and I'll bring it to that area that I had colored with the zigs and drag that out. And I'm kind of playing with two different ways of doing this. The couple times I'll start from the color, so I'll start at the bottom of the petal where I added the color and bring that out to the edge. And other times I'm starting at the top part of the petal and bringing the water to the color. So they do actually kind of give you two different looks. When I start at the top of the petal, I'm able to have more of a highlight area versus when I start where I started the color, that brings a lot more color out. So depending on what you're looking for, I guess, is maybe how you want to do it. But I personally really liked using the paintbrush to do this and having that little dish of water. I messed around with using the water brush pens, but I just didn't like it. I like to have a little bit more control. And I know with watercoloring, it's kind of more loose and less controlled, I guess. So I really liked using the paintbrush. That just helped me I get to determine how much water is put in there. Whereas with the water brush pen, I would squeeze too hard. Too much water was coming out all over the place. And this just worked out better for me. So you're kind of learning along with me. I'm just sharing what I found I like and what helps me best. And I really did like how this came out. This had such a nice, soft tone to it, which is really different for me if you've seen any of my cards or videos. This was just a really softened look. And I do love the look of watercolor. I just have a hard time with it because it's not what I'm used to. So I'm stepping out of my comfort zone for this. So I continue this throughout the entire card where I'm dropping in that color in a few petals, and then I'll bring in the water to blend that out a little bit. And you can see this image is coming together really nicely. And I do this throughout all the petals, and I will do it with the leaves as well. For the middle parts of the flowers, I just bring in the color and I just use those brushes to color in. I'm not going to blend it out with water or anything. I just left it as is. And that's the nice thing with the zigs is you can just straight color. You don't even have to use water. They do blend really nice together when you have the right colors there. So I just thought this worked out really nice. For my leaves, I'm going to be coming in with light blue and light green. Really easy colors. And this was just kind of an experiment. I was trying out that blue to kind of give my leaves more of a bluish tone to it. And this took a little work. It's still something that I'm working on playing with, but yeah, that's the fun of practice. And I'm sharing my practice with you. And I did leave in everything in this video. I didn't want to skip anything. You know, if you're kind of learning like me or you're not really familiar with the Zig Clean Color markers, I left the entire thing in here. So this is a little bit longer of a video than what I normally would post. I hope this does help you though to get more familiar and comfortable with those markers. It's something that's been sitting on my shelf for a while and I've just never really played with them. So I go through all of those markers, and I don't really want to leave you with just music. I don't know if you're into stories or if you want to sit and listen to me talk, but I'm sitting here filming this. Took my kids to school. I have 2 kids. Took them to school, and it's nice and quiet in my house. And after the weekend and the morning I've had, I'm enjoying a very nice quiet house. We have, like I said, 2 kids, and if you've seen my post from earlier in the month, I have a daughter and a son, and my son is autistic. He is going to be 8 years old this year, and it's love him to pieces. Honestly, we would not change a single thing about him, but there are struggles. We do share a lot of happy moments and laughter, and he is a goofy kid, but we do have struggles, and one of those struggles was this morning, which was he gets up pretty early in the morning, and the first thing he does is he grabs his phone, he sits and he hangs out and he plays his phone and his games, but he screeches, and we honestly have no really idea why. His communication is limited. He does have some words, but as far as telling us why something is wrong, how he's feeling, what's bugging him, he's limited. He doesn't quite understand feelings and things like that, or telling us what's wrong. So he sits there in the morning sometimes and just lets out these screeches. And it's easier for me to tolerate those screeches after I've had my coffee. So thankfully I had my coffee this morning, but he just wouldn't stop. So that's what I dealt with for about an hour. We had to have a timeout. We did some counting. We took the phone away, which led to a complete meltdown. So that's just part of how we deal with things. You know, with autism, you can't always know what's going on. You have to be kind of pretty good at charades. And I've gotten pretty good. So actually, back to the card here, what I'm doing now is I wanted to add that light blue hue around the entire centerpiece flowers. So I'm coming in, I was going to do a darker blue, but I think I just stuck with the light blue, and I'm adding that color. And then, like I said, I'm starting out from the color and dragging that out. I tried it both ways. One thing I really did learn with going around this is I really had to add the water. I didn't want a distinct line around my image. I wanted it to be a nice soft blue, but that's one thing with the zigs is it's not always predictable, and that's kind of the fun of watercolors. It's not predictable. It's kind of loose. And so, but that was one thing I did learn is I really had to drop in the water. I had to really bring in that water to push all that color out and try make it not look so expected, not the word I want. not so planned out. I wanted it to be kind of a natural hue behind it. So I'm really happy with actually how it turned out. Like I said, as I went around the entire centerpiece here, I did kind of play with just different ways of doing it. I started laying down more color. You can see here that I really dropped in the color, and then I just brought in more water to really push that out, kind of dragging the color out to certain areas so it wasn't looking so planned out. And I was really happy with it. It's definitely something I want to play with some more. As far as cardstock goes, like I said, this one is the Tim Holtz watercolor paper. It really held up to it. I know some people have used Bristol paper. They found that Bristol paper works really well with the zigs. I haven't experimented too much. I knew I was going to be using quite a bit of water for this card, so that's why I went with the Tim Holtz watercolor, because I knew it was going to hold up to all the coloring that I was going to do in the water that I'd be adding to this. So I can just finish that off. And anyway, back to my son. Anyway, we did get him called out. We have some books that work on anger management, which it's not like he has anger management, but we just didn't know what was causing the problem this morning. And that's just, like I said, one of the things we deal with in the house is we just don't know. So we did kind of a little timeout. We counted to 10. We talked, and he settled down, and it worked out where it was just in time for school. Then he was happy-go-lucky again. And that's kind of one thing there's a lot of things that are fun about him, but when he's happy, he is so happy. It's just getting past those unexpected points. So just, kind of some behind the scenes look at our life dealing with autism. So back to my card. We'll be getting this finished up now. I'm going to be using the Kind Flower stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And in this video, I also left in all of my mistakes. Just that's another reason why it's kind of longer, is I have a mistake coming up here. So I'm using some black cardstock with my Misty tool, pushing that up with the Misty corners to kind of straighten that out. And I had a tricky time doing it because it was just so sticky on the edges. It kept sticking to my Misty corner. But I'm going to line this up, and I'll also stamp this in the Simon Says Stamp clear ink and heat emboss it with white embossing powder. And I'm going to trim this down into a thin strip is my plan. That was the whole idea behind it. And if you watched my haul video, I shared a haul video recently that I had picked up from Simon Says Stamp, and one of those things was a new Tim Holtz paper trimmer. It's a guillotine trimmer. I love it. It does cut really clean, but there is a learning curve apparently that I needed to catch on to. So here I'm just heating up that strip so it's nice and embossed. And my mistake will be coming up here shortly. Cleaning that off with my Lawn Fawn chamois, stamp chamois. Okay, so now I'm bringing in my paper trimmer. And like I said, I just left everything in. I wanted to just see how my process went with this card. And like I said, it's a really nice, clean cut trimmer. So I line this up and hold that down. That's definitely one of the key points. Here it comes. Are you watching? Here it goes. I'm going to line that up and cut. And I pause. And I may have said some colorful words because I cut my embossing words. I didn't line it up good. I wasn't paying attention, or I couldn't see. I'm still learning where the actual cut line is going to be. So I need to redo my piece. So I'm going to re-stamping that, reheat embossing it. Like I said, a little bit of a learning curve with the paper trimmer apparently. I was using a Fisker's trimmer, and I wanted more of a straight look, cleaner look with my cuts and not have to worry about blades. That's why I invested in this Tim Holtz trimmer. The other thing I'll point out with that trimmer too is it has a clear piece on it that you slide your paper under. Hold that clear plastic piece down. There are times that I'll just put my paper in and slice, and my paper moves because I'm not holding that clear plate down. So that's another tip when you're using that trimmer, is make sure you're holding that down. Like I said, I was just kind of used to my Fisker's trimmer. I didn't really hold anything down before like that. So lots of tips and tricks and interesting things you're learning today with me, because it's Monday, so happy Monday. And I did have a few extra speckles on my card. At this point, I was like, whatever. I wanted to get this done. I was already messed up once. I'm going to keep going. So now I'm going to bring that in, and I learned from my mistakes, bring in my paper trimmer, And I'll get the one side cut, which was fine. See, there's a clear plastic piece. Hold that down. Otherwise, your paper is going to move and you will not get a straight cut. So now I'm turning it, which is going to leave me a really fine strip to line up. But I thought I was safer this way, that I had a better shot of where my words were. Where my words were. Excuse me. There we go. Of course, I wanted to try and make it even thinner. So, hey, let's try it again. You didn't screw up yet. Let's try and do it again. I just wanted it a more thinner strip than what I had there. Yeah, I was really testing it in this. I really was. So once I have this nice and thin, cleaned off my edges, get rid of my scraps, I can start pulling my card together. So I did try and run this through a die cut machine to kind of flatten that out. And then I also cut it out with the WONKY stitched rectangle die from Simon Says Stamp. I really like those. That was kind of one of my biggest things on my wish list, was those WONKY rectangles. So I'm going to be adding that to a piece of key lime cardstock. That was a really nice, great pop of color that contrasted well with the rest of the card. And I'm going to layer this heavily with foam tape. I wanted to have, since there was so much going on and the card was still kind of warped a little bit from all the water, I thought this foam tape would hold this down really well. So I'm using my Big Mama roll there of 3D foam tape to pop that up on my card. And then line that up, and I can adhere that down. And then I'll be doing the same thing. I'm cutting this into strips, and I'm going to pop up my sentiment. Thank you for your kindness. I have lots of people that are super kind to me, and I want to show them my appreciation with this card. And a couple finishing touches, I'm just going to add some sparkling clear confetti jewels from Pretty Pink Posh. And I'll be adding those with my jewel picker, which is pretty handy to have, and my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, which I think has a really great hold. It's one of my favorite adhesives. So thank you for listening to me babble today. I hope you picked up some tips and tricks and maybe give these zig markers a try. It's, like I said, still something I'm learning too. So if you did like the video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. I'll have the supplies listed down below in my video description and blog as well. Thank you for stopping, and I will see you next time.